Bassett, and we're going to look at a couple of breaches. And the first one, I think, is going to take a little bit of time, so I'm going to get right into it. The first one is a report of cyber attack on the U.S. grid. So we're going to take the news article, which I've already got opened, and we're going to go figure out what happened and try to turn it into some structured data. And the fun thing is, this is like the standard, oh my gosh, the world is burning down, right? First ever cyber attack on the U.S. grid. Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, it's okay. So you go and you like read, and I just had just a chance to skim this before the stream. It's like, yeah, the internet-facing firewalls had some like known denial of service vulnerability exploited. Um, Again, they're internet-facing firewalls with a known vulnerability. Like, I mean, there's not any. I don't think it even indicates that these were targeted, and like the disruption is less than 5 minutes. The firewall basically just rebooted, and then they found the records to the firewall reboots occurred over a 10-hour period for each firewall, less than 5 minutes each. And then they applied a patch, and it went away. So it's not the end of the world, but it's going to be fun because we're going to get to code an OT issue. Denial of service one. I wonder where they reference denial of service. Previous lessons learned network packet broadcast storms, because this isn't the first time a DDoS has caused this. And plus, the reality is if you're transmitting over the internet, you probably shouldn't assume that that will always work perfectly for you, because the internet doesn't always work perfectly on demand. It's best effort by definition. So let's get this started. Okay. Security incident. This was an incident, though it's not going to be a breach. We're not going to have victim information, I don't think. I don't think it says who the actual target was. It's just a NERC lessons learned. So, let's see. Reference, use this, but also really the actual lessons learned document is the useful reference. So put that in here, and we'll give it a look. So, okay. Problem statement: firewalls were exploited, unauthenticated reboots over a 10-hour period, caused less than 5-minute outages between field devices and sites at a control center. And this happened, at least it was reported on September 19. I published September 4th. I mean, we probably can't make any assumptions about when it happened other than probably in 2019. Oh, and I put these in the summary, not in the reference. There we go. Summary, unauthenticated. I could almost just take this, but it's so long that I'm going to not do that. Unauthenticated DDoS, or unauthenticated vuln in firewalls, allowed reset by unauthorized third party in power grid control center. And it really brings, like, the interesting thing anytime I've worked with kind of OT type stuff is it's not like the PLCs in the industrial control system, the embedded systems that end up being the target of breaches, because they tend to be kind of obnoxiously unique systems, and it's like you could spend a bunch of time trying to figure out how to exploit them, or you can exploit like the Windows XP system that runs it all. And so normally the human machine interface, HMI, is what gets targeted because it's easier to target. This seems to be pretty detailed. Timeline, we're not going to have a lot of detail on this. We're going to say 2019. I'm just going to skip the month. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. John, like trying to get like obscure embedded systems to talk to each other. In fact, so I knew this place that had segmentation between kind of their external and internal networks, and the only reason was because for some reason they couldn't get the network stack on the internal equipment to talk to the network stack on the external equipment, and they literally had to put a like a layer 6 proxy in between the two segments just to get them to talk normal network traffic back and forth. It was that bad. And so it's like segmentation by accident. So compromise, this was seconds because it was just, sounds like send a packet of death of some type, which really we probably don't want to know what it takes to send a packet of death to a firewall. Exfiltration is not applicable because no data was stolen. This is an availability issue. Discovery happened, it sounds like within minutes. And containment happened, it sounds within hours, and we'll say 10. Victim ID is unknown. It's a power company. I have a hard time believing a power company would have less than 1,000 employees. So I'm going to go with large. And then we know the industry because it's utilities. Oh, and that was not utilities we clicked on there. Okay, electric power, generation, transmission, distribution. That sounds correct. So we'll put that in. And remember, we don't have to put like the entire Nix code in here. You can put in short ones. Anything, it just has to be the first two characters that are required to validate. And now we changed it, so now it validates that the first two numbers are one of the valid Nix codes, or 00 for not applicable, or unknown, excuse me. Locations affected, one in the United States. I don't think they say where, do they? We'll take a quick look to see if it's got any more detail about where, but they probably wouldn't say where because where would tell you pretty much who it was, and that wasn't the point of the report. Learn event analysis, Western Electric coordinating. Oh, Western Electric Coordinating Council. I don't know what that is. Like the power grids in Western US, I guess, maybe. Now we'll skip it for now. It's not really important. The action, and this we do know, was hacking, exploit vulnerability. In fact, denial of service is in here. Denial of service, and then we are going to mark exploit vulnerability at the same time because denial of service is not inherently an exploit of vulnerability. The vector was internet, intertenant, other physical partner, web application, VPN, physical access, other tenant, hypervisor, desktop, command shell, backdoor, third party. It's going to actually be other. Because you really don't normally see exploits of vulnerability where it's really just straight at the network equipment, which is also going to be another interesting one, right? This is going to be the network equipment that's the asset. So this is exploited vector equals public internet. Just for a note so we have it. And then CVEs. We don't really know. I don't think they say here. I'm sure what they say is patch and don't allow weird packets. Yeah, just filter out the weird packets. And a bunch of other recommendations. Okay. So really that's all there was for the action, I think. The actor was external, but I don't think we know who or why. You know, we don't know if it was targeted or it, excuse me, we don't know if it was intentional, or if someone was just sending packets around or just hit a firewall. They may not have even known what they were hitting. Assets. It doesn't really say. It says firewalls plural, I think, right? Like this was more than one firewall. The vendor's firewall was exploited. Maybe it's only one firewall. Who runs? Okay, each firewall. Thank gosh. I would be horribly depressed if a operationally critical system was running, directly on the internet with one path. Like, you know, don't we all like just inherently build a dual parallel stack just because things fail? Like that would be depressing. So okay, so this was network equipment, which I never get to code. No one ever attacks the network equipment, and firewall of all things. We don't know the number. It was on premise. It was OT, operational technology. We don't know anything about the operating system, and it resided in the United States. And then the attribute is going to be availability. And so this is interruption and the duration was minutes and at most 5. Got a lot of details. This one actually has a lot of detail on places we wouldn't otherwise have known. We really don't know targeted. Certainly it disrupted something important, but we don't know why. Discovery method, I think, is internal. Log review infrastructure. I'm going to guess this is monitoring. Probably not security report by employee. Other, it's log, IT review, infrastructure monitoring, I think is probably the likely discovery method. Value chain really doesn't matter. We don't know if it was targeted or if they were just shotgunning the internet. Impact, maybe distracting. Someone had to write a report and there were outages for connectivity, but nothing really beyond that. Plus, this was a random assignment. Event chain was a hacking action by an external actor on a network asset, compromised availability of all things. And with that, we have our first one down. If you've ever seen me before, I copy these off into a Word document or a text document. The reason being just this is stored in a browser and it's stored in local memory within the browser. But just in case something goes wrong, we want to have a backup copy. There's nothing more depressing than like doing a literal dozen incidents without copying them off and then having something go wrong, or having your browser crash or having export fail and losing 3 hours of work. So we will close this one down. Close issue and go on to the next one. I remember the next one being interesting too. Oh, Karma. Yeah, this one sounds interesting to me. Credit Karma glitch. And so an error of some type. Use of credit monitoring site Credit Karma has complained that they were served other people's account information when they logged on. There we go. A delivery error of all things. This was happening. Come on, Ad. August 14th. First time logging in, it gave me my information. As soon as I refresh the screen, blah, blah, blah. The message user on LinkedIn. So did Credit Karma respond back about this? Several screenshots were sent of other people's accounts. Login page. Let's put offline. It's blank. So they denied that there was a data breach. Would not say how many customers were affected. When I remember his experience this morning was a technical malfunction. So we know that it happened within half a day, a couple of hours. We don't know the number of people, background information, but this isn't bad. This is doable. Okay. Security incident confirmed. Our ID for this one is 139139. Reference TechHub, TechCrunch. Yeah. Summary. Victim site serving personal information to the wrong people. Customers. We'll say wrong customers. Confidence. This is pretty cut and dry. Incident happened August 14th, I guess. It's like literally the same day, or was it the day after? Yeah, right. Blah blah blah. Crash login page. Karma denied. Yeah, we'll put it on. It's the same day. I mean, it doesn't hurt. 2019. That's not 2019. And technically, if you put 2109, it should catch it. It's got some filters in on this to make sure you don't put anything too far in the future, too far in the past. It's like maybe 4 years in the future and like 50 years in the past. So it does try to filter out profoundly incorrect dates. Not that that has ever happened to us. August. We'll say 14th. Worst comes to worst. Put morning, but we really don't know. Compromise took we'll say seconds as people logged in. Exfiltration, again, was seconds. It just happens immediately. And this is kind of that thing you see where, except for advanced attacks where they pivot through the network and where we have a lot of detail, we really, like a lot of what we code here, it's going to be just seconds or minutes because the attackers want that really quick attack. And that's part of the reason we've stopped talking as much about timelines in the DBIR is because timelines matter for, the 15% of advanced attacks maybe. But even then, a lot of times the attacker has what they need pretty quickly within the network, and then they just kind of sit around to see what else they can get. And for the 85% of simple attacks, the timeline doesn't really matter at all, right? The attackers can simply they get in, they do their thing, and they go because they're trying to be efficient. Discovery happened probably within hours of the organization. Well, we'll say minutes. It sounds like they were contacted pretty quickly. And containment was hours, so within the morning. So we'll say, let's say 3 hours. It's could be one either direction, but I think that's a pretty safe assumption. The victim is Credit Karma. And what do we know about Credit Karma? Number of employees. Oh, thank you, Google. But let's see what that's from. People also search for, okay, so it says 700 employees, I guess from Wikipedia. Well, I can live with that. That's a lot of employees for a technical startup, I guess. I'm going to look for the Nix code, but I think they're going to be that one that I really like now. Yeah, 522320, which is data. Oh no, this is not. This is financial transactions. Interesting. Okay. Processing financial transactions, processing reserve and clearinghouse activities. Okay. I can live with them being marked as finance. And we'll say one site really is affected. This is the United States thing. State, we don't necessarily know the physical state where everything is located. The emotional state, probably frustrated. Actions, this was an error. It's just simple misdelivery. You send the wrong thing to the wrong person. It's unknown. Why? Sounds maybe like a random error of some type, but certainly no one's telling us what it was. Actor, this would be internal. But I'm going to say unknown because we don't know who made the error. Was it a programming error? Was it an operations error? Did just the system go wrong? I don't think that we can say definitively that it was the system administrator or anyone else, so we'll just say unknown. Motive doesn't apply because it was an error, so we'll close that. We'll close that down. The asset was one web app, so server, web app. My guess is Credit Karma cloud hosted? What's that website that we just found for cloud hosting of things? Where do we save that website to? So we just found a website that kind of talked about the technical stack that different companies use. And I forget what it was. I have to go back and watch my other brief, but it was in my, my bookmarks. So it was, we're looking for the Credit Karma tech stack, right? That's probably, is there such a thing as stack share? Is that really a thing? Credit Karma, if it is, runs on Google Analytics, Git, Docker, Slack, AWS. Looks like S3, EC2. So what? Apache, Python, Nginx. I guess that means that they're an EC2, so cloud system. So we'll say external cloud assets. Yeah, I know it's really kind of cool that they show this. They all Linux, I guess. Linux, JavaScript, Apache, Python. It doesn't exactly look Windows, but they also have VirtualBox, internal, um, for their DevOps side. So I guess well, but that's not surprising to develop in Docker and VirtualBox. Such, okay, well, we'll go with that. Probably a Linux. Well, so they're using EC2 and S3, which kind of implies that they're using whole systems. But I won't. Why don't they call out? Am I missing like Linux here somewhere? Is that am I missing that on here somewhere? Like the actual platform they're using in EC2, or would you just assume that because they're using Nginx and PHP and Apache and stuff, and who runs this, those on anything else? We'll go with Linux. This is IT. So United States. Unless they're hosting credit information outside the country. Attribute. This is confidentiality, so this is going to be a breach. We don't know the amount because they didn't say how many people, but it was kind of it was personal information. It wasn't bank accounts, and it wasn't payment card data, I don't think. And so it should just be personal data. We'll say of customers, state, stored, I guess. Is how it was provided. Was not abused. No partner data. No. Partner number doesn't matter. Credit monitoring. They just shut it down. So targeted. This was not applicable because it was an accident. Discovery method, it was discovered by customers. And then the impact is going to be insignificant, right? They just made the fix by the morning. That was it. So random assignment. The event chain is going to be an error by an internal actor on a server asset led to a breach of confidentiality. And we can mark that validated. And we're on a roll. Actually ahead of time for once. So copy that one down. New. Off topic for when you get a sec. Any advice on a stack configuration of collaborative data analysis environment? Oh yeah, sure. And so I'm a big fan of Jupyter, Project Jupyter. On the DBR side, right, we get in a bunch of data, particularly from non-incident partners. And there's, a small single-digit handful of us that do analysis on that data. And so what we use is a Jupyter Hub install. So Jupyter notebooks are actually an individual web server per person. And the idea is you have this web server, and then it spins up individual kernels for each notebook that you want to work on. And so you might work on multiple notebooks at the same time, and you use the Jupyter Hub server, the Jupyter server, the Jupyter Notebook server, to work on the multiple notebooks. But what that means is that a Jupyter Notebook server is kind of a single-person system. And so Jupyter Hub is the solution to doing that. And the idea with Jupyter Hub is that anyone who logs into it, the hub spins up a Jupyter Notebook specifically for them. And the way we have it configured, we actually have the Jupyter Hub runs in a DMZ and then spins the notebooks up within an enclave and exposes them to the few people who can authenticate to that system through the internal LAN. That way, all of our data, all of our analysis stays within the enclave because the notebooks are within the enclave, the data is within the enclave, and the kernels run within the enclave. We spin them up on as Docker containers. And I think there's a couple different options for how you can spin it up, but every time someone logs in, it spins up a Docker container, which has kind of all the packages that we want installed. Now it's a little bit, I'm not sure how it would work. In our environment, which is fairly isolated, a user can't simply install another package into their environment. I think if you did this in a more open environment, a user would be able to install a package, but if you shut down the hub, shutting down the hub would shut down the notebooks that the hub had opened, and doing that would potentially delete the containers that the hub had stood up, because the hub is standing up a Docker service per container. And I think that this works better. There's a Kubernetes one as well. I use Swarm just because of the port management. Um, but I think that there's a couple different ways you can have it spin up the individual containers. And so there may be a way that you spin up the container and the packages are still installed and someone doesn't have to reinstall packages every time you reboot the hub. That said, you don't reboot the hub a whole lot. And especially if you put a proxy in front of the hub. Remember, this is all recorded. If you put a proxy in front of the hub, you don't have to reboot the hub as much. We use Trafic as a proxy in front, and that lets us not just run the hub internally, but also it separates the hub from the actual proxy. Otherwise, Jupyter Hub spins up its own proxy. And it lets us have a little bit more control, and we can use the proxy to do other things that are beneficial for us, for our environment. And so that's worked really well for us. Getting started with, it took a long time. It wasn't easy figuring out how to get the Jupyter Hub environment to work exactly. The config file is maybe 50 lines, but it's getting the exact right 50 lines took weeks and weeks and weeks the first time through. That said, we have a very unique environment that we were spinning it up in. And so my guess is if you were spinning it up, like starting out on kind of a local environment and then spreading out, it wouldn't be near as hard. My guess is you can follow a pretty straightforward, spin this up in AWS or such, which would be really good. You could have people spin it up in AWS, and then you can set Jupyter Hub to shut their notebooks down if they aren't in use. That way you're only paying for what you need. And so using the default, there's a lot of configurations. There's not a lot of documentation around Jupyter Hub, but there's a lot of example stuff around it. And so you have to kind of learn from the examples. But if I were building a multi-tenant analysis environment, I would look at Jupyter Hub. I would also look at the way Netflix moves their processes into production. So if it's something where you're doing analysis and then you need to put it into production, Netflix has a really cool process where they do the development in Jupyter Notebooks, and then they have kind of a large distributed process for putting the notebooks into production in a parameterized way. And I think it's really cool what they do. And I really like it. So those are the places I would look if I were standing it up. It's certainly what we did and kind of in the direction we're hoping to go as well. So hopefully that is helpful. Yeah. That puts us right on time. Close this issue, and we'll see if we can get another 2 done. So let's see. Commissioner orders review into officer who leaked woman's address to alleged abusive partner. Ooh. The question is, do we want to include this as this qualifies within our corpus as a breach because of the way, because we track misuse and kind of verbal leaks and stuff. But in general, we don't code things unless a computer was involved somehow. There's a picture of a keyboard. Maybe that means a computer was involved. Okay. Queensland police officer accused of leaking a woman's address to her allegedly abusive former partner was docked some money but avoided prosecution. Because they don't have evidence. Well, that's helpful. Maybe it's just that they know it, but all the details and such. So there was no prosecution of the officer because of concerns that evidence, including text messages containing the alleged leak, could not be put before a court. And so leaked the address by text message. The meeting followed criticism from the level of information police gave Elizabeth about the outcome of her complaint. Said Mr. Stewart was accompanied by a lawyer and recorded the meeting. She said he complained He explained that this was because she is suing the police for a breach of privacy. Meaning of a level of... Okay, so I'm getting confused. She said she explained this was because she is suing the police for breach of privacy. Said Mr. Stewart, and Mr. Stewart... Mr. Stewart was the police commissioner. Constable Neal was the leaker. Told her senior constable Punchard had been flagged internally as a security risk because around access to the confidential police database. She and Mr. Stewart told... She said Mr. Stewart told her that Constable Punchard viewed the investigation of senior constable Punchard. Okay. Was subject to an ongoing sanction. So Punchard accessed a database and then texted the message to her abusive partner, right? Or texted the address to her abusive partner. I mean, I guess that really is kind of the definition of a breach. So it does involve a computer database, so there is some technical portion of this story. To have a senior investigator further consider the investigative file. He's made a commitment. So then the constable told her about it, and she wasn't happy about what the constable did from the sound of it. Like, she wanted the constable to do more. She was grateful for the meeting so they could raise concerns. I'm hoping it will achieve a better outcome. So, copy of text messages dated February 3rd, 2014, which means... So this is getting published in 2018. The text messages happened in 2014. Asked Liz's former partner how to spell the names of both her husband and her father-in-law. Then sent the address to confirm they were where she lived. She and her family have since moved. In text messages, Puncher then, no need to ask her now. That Elizabeth's former partner, no need to ask her now. Just tell her you know it now via freedom of information. Then said she'll be pissed even better. Just tell her you know where she lives and leave it at that. Oh, what a jerk. And that's the lightest way to describe that. Elizabeth said the text messages contained in his phone she owned and used for a time by her former partner and then returned to her. Oh. And police had twice downloaded contents, but that's why it wouldn't be necessarily admissible because she's had it and they can't prove that he was the one that sent it. Former partner had been subject to an ongoing domestic violence. Okay, in April last year, the assistant wrote that the provided this was sufficient evidence to support the allegations. She said was concerned the evidence via phone was tainted. Okay. Okie dokie. So this was discovered in 2018, but really occurred. So we're going to put in the 19 report, or the 19 corpus, but it occurred in 2014. Reference: a police officer looked up the address of an abuse victim and provided it to her abuser. Okay. Oh, that goes in the summary, not in the reference. Okay. Here, confidence seems to be pretty straightforward. The incident, the timeline, this happened in 2014, February of February 4th, right? February 3rd. And then compromise, it sounds like it took minutes. Exfiltration took minutes because the guy just looked it up. Discovery took 3 years. Sounds like because last year they finally looked at this phone that she'd gotten back. Containment from discovery unknown. It was potentially negative because she may have moved before they even discovered it. The victim, in this case, the victim is the Queensland Police Department because it was their database. Though in reality, it was the woman who suffered the she was the one who suffered the consequences of it. We assume. Queensland Police Department. Employee count. I have no clue. Queensland. Oh, come on. Queensland number of employees. I guess that should be police. Oh, it's nice of them to offer it. 11,000 police officers and 2,000 other staff. Oh, that puts them squarely between 10 and 25,000. There we go. Industry. What is police? 922120. We've coded a couple of police officer or police department issues, haven't we? But I mean, that's understandable. It's where there is useful data. So, oh, this was not the United States though, unless Queensland has moved substantially in the recent past. Queensland should be Australia, and where in Australia should it be? Let's see. Queensland, so AUQLD. We'll assume that Queensland is in Queensland. I guess we need to go to Australia here. There we go. Good for me for not putting in Austria, which came really close to happening there. Okay. And then, what is the M49 for Australia? Patagonian, Oceania, 009053. Okay, 9053. Nice thing about Australia being very big is it's easy to find in M49. Okay, so we'll close this. Close the victim information and the action. This was misuse. This is proved workaround hardware, possession abuse, privilege abuse, and it's the access to that database. The privilege of accessing that database. That is the error. It sounds like not like physical access within the corporate facility. I mean, but it was a database, and so it was probably on the network. So LAN access. This was used to exfiltrate because they already had access. And then actor. You know, I wonder if we should remove. So I'm going to put a note to potentially remove infiltrate from misuse, because kind of by definition a misuse action shouldn't be able to infiltrate, because if you've got access, you shouldn't need to infiltrate anything. And so the question becomes, should that ever be available? So we'll create a Varus coding issue. Should infiltrate exist as a result of misuse? The argument against it is that misuse excuse me, sorry, is that misuse implies legitimate access, in which case a misuse action shouldn't be able to infiltrate because they already had the access. So we'll label that as a enumeration issue, and that will be available when we do our DBR review next year, kind of in the July or late August, early September timeframe. We'll go through all the various issues that exist. Anything marked as an enumeration or a schema change, we review them and consider whether we want to add them to Varus for the next year. So we're always trying to kind of tweak it to be better documented. A lot of the changes we make even are just documentation changes. It makes a lot of sense for us to um, continuously improve the documentation more so than changing the schema even. So we have one misuse action. The actor is not external. Internal, I think we went guard, and then we've already got an issue to change this to guard or police officer, I think. The motive was, I think I'm going to put ideology, because generally when someone is helping someone else, a friend or something, we mark those as kind of ideology. Though there is a question about whether we should have a motive that better defines. And actually, that's worth an issue too. Do we need a motive that better defines helping someone else? Friends or family, really. Helping friends or family. And then the question is, if not, do we need to change the definition of the ones that are there to better represent? To change definition of the existing motives to better capture which to use in this case. And by the way, if you're curious about the issues create, you can always look at the various issues and you'll see them pop up right after we talk about them on stream. So thank you for the bless you, by the way. I appreciate it. And by the way, I'm not near as bad. My mother, so she was a grade school teacher, and she'd have to tell her classes at the beginning of the year that when she sneezes, she's likely to sneeze like 6 or 7 times. And that it's just completely normal. You don't have to go get the school nurse. It's okay. Otherwise, her classes would think that, something was profoundly wrong and try to help go get, staff to help her. So, okay, they said this was a server database that he accessed, and it sounds like one. It's not clear how it was hosted. It is an IT system, and we'll assume Australia, because who hosts their database, their police database outside their country. And then actually actor, I guess it was internal, so there's no company or location. This was definitely a breach. It sounded like 2 addresses, so personal information, the address of her father or her family, and her address. The data victim would be, since this is the police department, she is, I think, a customer of the police department in this case. The data was stored. Data was abused. We think so. I mean, it was abused because it was sent to her abusive partner. Whether he did anything or not, just sending is abusive. Discovery method was internal. No, it wasn't internal. It was discovered when they imaged the phone. So external law enforcement, I think is closest answer. Targeted, this was very targeted. Value chain, really no development because it was misuse. Impact, insignificant. And plus, well, here, let's close down impact. And then plus, this was a random assignment. And an action, this was misuse by an internal employee of a server asset led to a compromise of confidentiality. And we can mark this one validated. Okay. Puts this here. Give me 1 second here. Go back and close this on, return. And we have time for one more, it looks like. So close this, close the issue. See, and then commission orders review, that we did that one, and then Oregon Tax Agency employee copied personal data of 36,000 people. You know, this is the first one that's actually kind of like an actual breach of some type. So what happened? Wanted to use the work as a template for a new employer. Interesting. Okay, so what happened here? A state employee who uploaded sensitive personal information of at least 15,000 organs to a personal cloud storage account resigned this week. The employee uploaded about 60 spreadsheets containing more than 500,000 records, including addresses, socials, other personal information to Google Drive. The information was used. So this is going to be another misuse. The information was used by the department to reconcile accounts, but the employee sought to upload it to a personal account because he wanted to use the spreadsheets and queries as templates for his work product at a future employee or employer. The department said in a prepared statement in response to EO Pamplin Capital Bureau. Okay. Spreadsheets were the work product of a former department employee and used complex queries, gather data, and do calculations. Oh, you poor guy. No one would have noticed if you just copied the macros instead of copying the entire spreadsheet. Employees used the state computer to upload the information. The upload was detected by officials in a routine review of system logs. So maybe that kind of sounds DLP-ish, which is interesting. During the investigation, identified employee told him what happened because he wasn't trying to do anything evil. Said March 23rd. So happened February 21st. Costing the department $28,000. That's nice. We actually have an impact. Okay, so this is actually a pretty good breach. It's happened in 2018, so we'll count against 2019. Facet security incident confirmed. GitHub issue reference. Got several references here. It's really an interesting breach. You know, we haven't had one just like normal, you know, what probably people stereotypically think of as a breach in all the ones we've looked at here, which is, you know, kind of the thing. Like, very few breaches are they're either like the very mundane ransomware type thing, or they're like these kind of one-off type things. It's not your like APT type attacks are the non-stereotypical type. So employee copies spreadsheets to personal Google Drive to take the macros to his next employer. Also copies 15,000 people's worth of PII. Incidentally. Okay. Pretty good stuff here. We know the timeline. Happened 2018, February. Then it has the exact date, right? This government is good about disclosing details. We don't know how long it took to detect, but they notified people in March. So maybe we put weeks here. Or compromise took, you know, minutes. Exfiltration took minutes because it doesn't take that much time to upload a spreadsheet. Discovery, we'll assume, took at least days, and containment took maybe weeks because the notification happened in March of 2018. Oh, that is not March. That is March. Did I hit insert? We can see. No, I did not. Okay, and so they notified 36,000 people in March. Department sent direct notifications to 15,000 people. So 15,000 seems to be the confirmed number. I don't know how they can't tell whether the other 15,000 were compromised. This was the Oregon Department of Revenue. Okay, employee count, I have no clue. Oregon Department of Revenue. It's approximately 1,000 employees. Oh man, that's like one of our breakpoints. This is the problem: is when you get like approximately 1,000 employees. I'm going to say that anytime you see a number, the actual employees are higher unless the company has crashed. So we'll put a little more than 1,000. Industry, revenue. Gosh, I don't know where this is going to fall. It's going to be in public administration. Certainly executive offices, administration of, okay, affairs, national security, space research, ag, transportation, economic programs, urban planning, housing, conservation, air, water, environmental, veteran affairs, public health, public order, fire protection, parole and probation, correctional, legal, police, courts, justice, other government support, executive and legislative office, public finance activities. I want to say public finance activities. One in the United States. Region and US OR. This. That's our victim. The action was misuse. This is was unapproved software, unapproved workaround because they weren't trying to do their job. It wasn't possession abuse because this is physical access. It wasn't really privilege abuse. I'm gonna do knowledge abuse or storage or distribution of illicit content, which is not correct. This wasn't illicit content. They didn't email it. They uploaded it to a cloud storage. Data mishandling. They weren't handling it for legitimate usage, which is what's implied by data mishandling. So I'm going to use knowledge abuse. This is on the network. This is used for exfiltration. Notes uploaded PII to cloud storage. And notionally, maybe we need a cloud storage something, because it used to be that people emailed the data to themselves, but now they can use cloud storage along with, rather than emailing it to themselves. So that's a good thing for a Varus issue. Do we need cloud abuse similar to email or cloud misuse, email misuse in misuse varieties? And the reason is because people used to email data to themselves, but now they can simply upload it to a cloud service. We'll put the label as generation, submit that. You know, and the other thing is maybe instead of cloud abuse, it could be web app abuse. Could be web app abuse instead of cloud as well. Worth considering. It's probably not likely to happen, but we'll note it. The actor was internal. It sounded like, what do we know about the employee? Department employee. Just unidentified employee. So, end user, a regular employee. Motive was convenience, because he wouldn't have to recreate the formulas and such. And he was preparing to resign, actually. So we know that in this case. So we can close the actor. The asset in this case. The asset was probably his desktop. The user desktop or laptop that he exported the data from to the cloud services. Cloud. Ooh, this is an interesting one because cloud was involved, but cloud was not breached. So I'm going to put other. Say cloud was not the asset. See, this is why we include other, right? Like there's always, no matter how cut and dry a enumeration could be, there's always some reason why it's not actually true. Cloud was not the asset, but was used in the breach. Not the asset, say compromise. It's used in the breach. And we'll mark this as IT in the United States. And then the asset, the attribute involved was confidentiality. Was data disclosed? Yes. Say 15,300. So that's who they sent notifications to of personal information. Customer, member, constituent. State the data was stored unencrypted on his desktop. Data abused. No, the data that was breached, the personal data, was not abused. Technically, we also should add internal data for the equals the queries and macros he was trying to steal. Not that the state wouldn't probably have released them to him. Frankly, you could probably FOIA those macros, right? Because they were developed by the state. Yeah. Just you gotta get the information the right way. But he never had a chance to abuse it, I don't think. Close the attribute. Discovery method, was this targeted? Yes, it was. Well, it's a good question. I think it was opportunistic because it was the data he had available. He was not trying to harm the victim. It was not about the victim. It was about the data. Discovery method was internal, not external. Oh, come on, close. Discovered through IT review or log review, specifically they say. The value chain doesn't apply here for an abuse. This was impact was really, well, I mean, distracting, right? We know that they spent $28,000, almost $29,000 notifying people. And this is United States dollars because why in the world? Look, I'm sorry, I don't know why we track currency codes. We should have just told everyone to convert these to United States dollars, but this is how it is. So this, we don't know the max amount. Loss variety says fraud, asset fraud, legal and regulatory, operating cost, response and recovery. I mean minor, it's not a huge amount. Plus, this was a random assignment. Close down the, well, we'll note here, for breach notifications. Plus, you know, you could probably make a business of just prepared breach notifications. Because it seems to cost a lot of money, and it can't cost, you know, $2 to mail every single person. I'll bet you could bring that cost down with a company that just did breach notifications. In fact, you could probably do it on like a retainer system, like you pay X amount a month, and then, you know, because you have a contract with us, we'll charge a flat fee per user, per person you have to contact if you have a breach, you know, and we'll bring those costs down. You know, probably a pretty simple business that would decrease the cost of breaches significantly. Misuse by an internal actor on a user asset, compromise confidentiality of some people, and we'll mark this one as validated. We'll save it. Copy it off, return. We'll make an extra copy of it here, and we are right at time. Cost per user over time. To incentivize. No, I don't think you even do it to just incentivize security. Like, it's not like the goal is not to incentivize security; it's just to make money as a company, while at the same time, decreasing the cost of breaches, like at a cost that's not even really like it's not a investigative cost. It's not a cost that adds particular value. It's just kind of one of those things you have to pay if you have a breach. Is you got to notify people. Um, we caught over time to incentivize security. Yeah, I don't know. Like I think it would be better to just do it as a very simple business. Not try to like very simple economic model. Um, Not so much as an economic model with the goal of incentivizing, but this is really just kind of a CYA for organizations when they do fail, because we know that a lot of yeah, we can see whose company does better in breach notification land. Certainly, there's probably room for more than one company, you know. But so many organizations, right? Like the money is in notifications, it's in outside legal counsel, it's in IR, and people have contracts for outside legal counsel retainers. They have IR retainers. You should have a breach notification retainer, so that when you need to notify, you don't like have to go searching and try to figure out how to do it. You just call up the company, you tell them here are the list of people we need to notify. They provide a service, an hourly service to help you draft your letter explaining what happened, and then they mail it out for you. Um, I think it actually would be a pretty interesting business, and a way to help businesses who, the reality is where no one's perfect. So breaches are going to happen, but to help minimize the cost when they do. So anyway, we are about at time. I appreciate you coming by. And hopefully I will see you hopefully Thursday, same time, 10 Eastern time, for another session. So thank you.